Good morning, everybody. Yeah. So I will talk about importance of vegetables in drylands, but my presentation is a bit more general. Gulf will then specifically talk about gender issues and drylands. So the World Vegetable Center, we used to be known as AVRDC. We changed our name to World Vegetable Center, or WorldVeg in short. So we are an old organization worldwide. Our mandate is vegetables since 1970. We are a non-profit public good research organization, and we are present all over the world, and we have 4 regional offices in Thailand, in India, five, 2 in West Africa, Mali and Benin, and 1 in East Africa, here in Arusha. So we split our vegetables into 2 types. On the one hand, we have the global vegetables. So these are the vegetables that you all know, the tomatoes, the onions, the beans, the cabbages, the cucumbers. But in essence, these vegetables are nothing else but water standing up. There's not much nutrition in them. And on the other side, you have the traditional vegetables. So this is a big focus for regional office in Arusha. And these vegetables in general, as you know, are much more nutritious, much more sturdy against biotic and abiotic. I've got nothing here. Against biotic and abiotic stresses. They're much easier and faster to grow. And there is, if you had a chance to walk around in Arusha, in the markets, in Ombero, there's a growing demand for these vegetables in East Africa specifically. We call vegetables a win situation, and WIN standing for Women, Income and Nutrition, specifically the traditional vegetables. So Ralph will talk a lot about the gender issue of traditional African vegetables. Suffice for me to say that women really are the custodians of traditional vegetable value chains in East Africa, and also the ones that decide how and which vegetables to cook at night for the families. As to income, I'm just showing you this graph, which shows you a couple of vegetables compared to maize on the right side. Let me just see if this one works. Yes? So look at the red bars. The red bar shows you gross profit margin per unit area, and there's 3 messages here. So message 1 is if you grow vegetables compared to maize, there really is no comparison in terms of how much income you can make per unit area. Compare maize versus the vegetables. And the second message is comparing traditional vegetables, these 3 are traditional vegetables, to tomato. Traditional vegetables are as good in generating income as tomatoes, sometimes even better. And this other bar shows you the cost factors. And this is the third message. Growing tomato is very, very costly with input of fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, but compare it with Amaranth. There's very little cost you have to include to grow Amaranth. So Amaranth is really a high income generating, low cost vegetable compared to the rest. And then the third part of the WIN equation is nutrition. Yeah? And this, when we show this slide to people who do not know much about vegetables, they're always extremely shocked in a positive way. So this graph shows you how much 100 grams of a select number of commodities give in terms of daily needs to a pregnant woman in the first semester. Yeah? And you can see that the staples, rice, cassava, millet, as examples, that there is no nutrition in there. Meat, of course, very important for proteins. These are examples of global vegetables, cabbage, tomato. There is no nutrition in there, or little. Yeah? The legumes, mung bean, vegetable, soybean, are very nutritious, and they also have a lot of proteins. But look at the traditional African vegetables, and amaranth is also in there. They are 10 to 100 times more nutritious than other vegetables and other commodities. And this graph does not show you all the secondary plant metabolites that these traditional vegetables have, the antioxidants, etc., that makes the FAO recommend that everybody in the world eats 400 grams of vegetables and fruits. Good. Now, back to WorldVeg. We have We have the biggest collection of vegetable germplasm in the world, public collection of vegetable germplasm in the world, in our headquarters in Taiwan. We have about 60,000 accessions. And what's more important is probably the diversity. We have 440 species from 151 countries. In Arusha, we have the biggest collection of traditional vegetables in Africa. It's about 3,000 accessions, of which 2,000 are traditional African vegetables. For those that come to WorldVeg on Friday morning, you will see that gene bank. And this shows you, the bar shows you the distribution of traditional vegetables in our gene bank. We have a lot of African eggplant, okra, roselle, amaranth, and then a whole bunch of other traditional vegetables. Now, these gene banks, and ECHO also has a very nice gene bank. They cost money. These vegetables do not magically appear in a gene bank. So seed quality for what goes in a gene bank is very, very important. Physical seed quality, when we harvest seed for vegetables that go into our gene bank, we want to make sure, for example, there are no weeds in those seeds. Physiological quality, viability and vigor, very important to make sure that the vegetables have at least 80–90% germination rate and are very vigorous. And genetic quality. You don't want to mix or crossbreed new lines when you put in your gene bank. You want to have pure lines. So for example, for brassicas, they are cross-pollinating, so we have to use cages to separate the lines we put in our gene bank. Harvesting is also very important. Brassicas we have to harvest dry. This is just examples. African eggplant, the stage of harvest is very important. It has to be a red stage at full maturity. Seed extraction manually or with machines, and then drying. Drying for seeds in a gene bank, and ECHO also knows this, is very important. Your moisture has to be much less than 10%, which is difficult to achieve. So before they go in a seed storage, you basically measure moisture content, and then they go in a seed storage. So this is a lot of work and a lot of efforts. What I don't mention here is that all the seeds that is in a gene bank is characterized morphologically and also molecularly in many cases. So for those people that do want to order seed, we don't provide seed to individuals, but to research organizations and private and public sectors. Just go to the website, avrdc.org, and click on seed. And it's avrdc.org without the www, by the way. So we are not a museum of seeds. So we distribute seeds worldwide, about almost 10,000 accessions every year. Since we are in existence, we have distributed almost 500,000 seed samples. And in East Africa, a big chunk of our seeds goes to, of course, universities and national research organizations, but also a lot to seed companies. And I will now talk about 3 types of usages of how we make seeds available to the ultimately end user, the farmer. First, before I do that, I have one more slide of distribution of our traditional African vegetables from our gene bank in Arusha. And you can see that the biggest demand really is for cowpea, which is a vegetable that is highly drought resistant. So the first use is the household gardens. Ralph will talk about this in great detail. I will not talk about it. But many gene banks are struggling of how to reach the end user directly. The home garden seed kit, this is a seed kit, is a very unique way of how a gene bank directly reaches out to farmers and farmer groups. So basically the seed kit contains anywhere between 5 to 15 different little seed packs. And the whole seed kit is highly tailored to give, this is the basic idea, to give a family of 4 nutrition year round. And from a seed kit you can produce 300 kilograms of vegetables in a year. Yes, let me just leave it like that, and let me have Ralph talk more about seed kits. A second use is how we distribute and how we use our germplasm for the public and the private sector, for varieties, new varieties. And there we work very differently. So this is a bit the way how we breed and how we select vegetables, and how we have been doing this for the last 40 years. So we have our treasure here, the gene bank. We focus a lot on traits, pre-breeding, yeah? Specifically diseases, stress, tolerance, biotic, abiotic, and nutrition, something that many seed companies don't have the time or money or interest to do. But nutrition for us is very, very important. And sometimes, I will talk about this in a bit, we go all the way down to actual breeding. I'm just going to try here. It's worse. Maybe it's your phone. Yeah, we go all the way down to actual breeding, and we have hybrid parents and hybrids. We also generate a lot of information on traits, on how to breed to private sector players, and a lot of capacity building training. We have had about 3,000 people trained over the years in Arusha, many of them on how to breed and how to select vegetables. Anyway, for each crop we have a production profile. This is a production profile for Amaranth. We focus on dark green leaves. There are some exceptions. In Uganda, they like purple, but in general, East Africa, dark green. Very early growth figure. This is for when you uproot Amaranth as a production technique, whereas if you do continuous harvesting of Amaranth, we aim for a long harvesting period. We also, and this is interesting, we go for high leaf production and high seed production. So even if you have a very high leaf yield and you have very low seed production, it's not a good variety because the private sector is not interested. They need also a lot of seeds to make these Amaranth lines. We also like creamy white seed color for grain Amaranth because the dark colors contain all kinds of compounds that are not very palatable. Lodging resistance and compact panicles for grain Amaranth. So for the public sector, we have released a whole bunch of traditional vegetables. For Amaranth, we have released Madeira 1, Madeira 2. And the way we do this is basically doing multi-locational trials, which is now replaced with DUS requests. We still do multi-locational trials with farmers. It's very essential. Toski then certifies for release. We give breeder seed to Horti Tengeru, which is the national program that is responsible for making basic foundation seed to ASA, and then ASA gives basic foundation seed to to private companies that make then certified seed. Good. We have a whole bunch of Amaranths in the pipeline for release. The DOS testing has been done, so we have a UG line. I will not mention the entire names, but we have a UG line of Amaranth that has a very high leaf yield. We have a dual type Amaranth HDL cell that is very good, and we have a very great grain Amaranth called Paris with big white seeds. What we also are doing now is really going for breeding and selecting pure lines. We have F5 and F6 populations of Amaranths, purple ones and green ones that have very, very high leaf yield and which we want to release very soon. With the private sector, so this was a bit public breeding sector, now private breeding sector, we changed our tech recently because they come knocking on our door, they want all our breeding lines and then they disappear. And that way it doesn't work. So we really started with an African breeding consortium. So what we give to the companies, we give germplasm, we give information on how to breed and what traits are present in our germplasm, and we give training. What they give to us, they are part of a consortium, so they pay us to be part of this consortium. They share information on the seed sales, because this is information we need to convince our donors of the importance of having gene banks, and they also give us their breeding material. If they don't do this, they are not part of the consortium and they don't have access to our material. I just give an example. I don't know what time how much have I talked now? 5 minutes left, so I will not give this example. It's a very interesting example. Sorry, it's about Bittercord. Last use of vegetables from our gene bank is for emergency situations. So there's a lot of emergency situations we have been working on. Flooding, tsunamis, earthquakes, drought, volcano eruptions, war, typhoons over the last 10 years. And these are the locations in the world where we have worked. So for drought, particularly interesting for this conference, we worked a lot in Tanzania. And this graph shows you the distribution of our seed for emergency situation versus household situation. The top 3 vegetables are traditional African vegetables, but that's the only similarity. If we go for distribution of seeds for emergency situations, we focus on kangkong, Chinese cabbage, and amaranth. So these top 2 here are vegetables that grow very quickly in areas that are completely wiped out by tsunamis, by volcanic eruptions, by flooding. Amaranth is also good vegetables for that. Now, within a vegetable, we also focus on very different accessions or varieties. So again, emergencies versus household. In emergency situations, we focus virtually only on this particular amaranth line, AHTL. Why? Because this is an amaranth variety that grows very, very, very quickly compared to the other lines we have in our gene bank. And this shows you, as a function of the emergency, the seed distribution, the types of seeds we give out for each emergency. So I'm going a bit quick now, but this is drought, yeah, for example, and this is volcanic eruption. So each color represents a different variety of vegetable. So you can see that the vegetable profile is completely different for these two. For drought, the 2 vegetables that we always focus on for emergency situations is vegetable cowpea and vegetable soybean, because these guys are really resistant for drought situations in marginal areas, including in Tanzania. So with this, I end my presentation, and I hand the microphone to Ralph, who will talk about home gardens and gender relations in dry areas.